This next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians. Recent Tartarians.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus. Tune in for another exciting episode of wonder, imagination, and discovery.
Recent Tartarians.
Метафоры образуют всеобщие закономерности, определяющие законы классической физики. Для нашего
Sometimes I
мира.
look at the moon and just think, this skin's beautiful.
Baby, when I met you, there was peace unknown.
Что касается энергии наномер, то она превышает ядерную в немыслимое число раз. 10 в 74 степени.
That's it. That's it. That's it. With your arms now. That's it. That's it.
Thank you for watching Xirtus. Keep listening. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, please follow and subscribe and share and support. It really helps. Coming up next, Xirtus.
By the way, that's gone. If you didn't record that, that's gone forever. It's gone.
Well, so Shiva was gonna be here. He was like, "Hey, let's do a show." I get like this email. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Okay, cool. Coming to Neuropa.
We're doing it
Where is
now.
he? I don't know, bro. I
It's
called
happening.
him. I was like, "Hey," and they're like on the phone, like, "This is Dr. Shiva's office, right?" Like, is he coming? So, if he does, cool. Otherwise, we have an itinerary. Not only is this Neuropa, which is pretty cool, but we have Paranoid Neuropa, because Paranoid American is joining us today, which is pretty sweet, which might kind of shuffle the cards a bit to our deck. And
It definitely will.
I think that's exciting. I don't know.
Yes.
This is our
Yes.
last week's thing, so you can check out. Sorry, Raf, go ahead.
Before last week, just have to click on log if you want to see the newest one, because it just
Oh,
just
go to-
published like literally 2 seconds ago. So
Oh, you
Yes.
genius. Wait, where did I go here? Just Neuropa 28? Is that today? Oh my god, you time traveler. You're here now. Good. So this is how Raph does things. It's so Prussian. It's all orderly. We've got like an itinerary, and you guys can follow along. Go to Commenciat posts right here, commenci.at/posts, and you can follow along. Right? This is like those cassette tapes that Disney made with the bouncing ball when they sing. So we're gonna do one of these.
luckily, I have no clue what you're talking about. So also, since Paranoid American
Really?
is here,
You never had like a bouncing ball sing-along cassette tape? You never sang along to a cassette tape as a kid?
But what is bouncing ball sing along? I don't know.
Follow the bouncing ball, and the ball bounces on the word, and they have
Yeah,
the
so you
subtitles.
know the cadence
Oh.
along with the lyrics, so you know
I've
exactly how to
seen-
stretch the
yeah.
words and all that.
I've seen that, but I don't think as a cassette. But
it-
then you can see it.
It's basically Pictionary for
Video.
music theory.
Yeah, I don't know. Is
Video
this it?
cassette.
Is this the right one? Follow the bouncing ball? No, that's not. Follow about music song. Song of the South is the first thing I think of, which is hilarious. But Song of the South, sing along. Is that the one? Here it is, dude. Nah, when I was a little kid, if you would like to own this licensed property, this is hilarious, by the way, that we're actually recording the FBI logo. Good job, and it's
You
shared
couldn't
for us
even get
all.
this if you wanted, I don't think.
Oh my god, this is one of my favorite cassette tapes. Twiddly dee, twiddly dum, fun, words on the screen. Where's my zippity doo dah? Where's my freaking zippity doo dah? Where are you putting my? Is it near the end here? Okay. Where? Show me the freaking words. What's even happening? It's not even on the screen. What's happening? What?
It's been retconned.
Are you as confused as I am? Because like it used to be like words and a ball bounced along the bottom of the screen.
Don't tell me it's a Mandela effect.
Dude, if it is, I'm scared. Anybody? What? Okay, come on.
This looks close. Oh no!
Yeah,
this is
you have the
this is
light,
like
but there's no
karaoke.
ball bouncing. Where's the freaking ball? Where's the ball? I've never been so worried. I've never been so concerned. Okay. There's a ball, and it bounces on the words. And
if we can find a
words.
Berenstein Bears video that has a bouncing ball, I think we can fix everything that's wrong with the world.
Is this why kids can't make music anymore without computers? Because there's no bouncing ball? Is it that simple? Did we discover the problem? I'm sorry. It's okay. But yeah, we'll move on from the bouncing ball. I apologize.
Guys, let me know if my audio is fine, because someone says I'm sounding strange, even though I'm not.
There is a weird kind of glitch there. Let me turn off echo cancellation for you. Try to talk again. Talk. Well, now I can't hear anything.
Yeah, he just turned them off.
That's horrible. Come back. What happened?
I don't know.
Okay, now you're back. You're back. Okay.
Am I still sounding strange?
Yeah, there's something clicky going on.
Okay, well, I'll be back. You have to hold it down.
Okay, Jiminy, click it. Well, in the meantime, while Raph is getting a new cable, let's talk about how beautiful that smile is, Tommy. How you doing?
You can school me about the Koreshan a little bit. If
Oh my
you just
God.
need to fill time.
I was going to ask you to fill time, but yeah, since you asked about this, I think it's important that you know. It's really interesting to me. So, I did the Vice special on Hollow Earth, and one of the things that we didn't get to go see it's on my list, right, is where you grew up in Florida. And so I always thought that I assumed you knew this, but
I've found out about it today.
Dude, all right. So I've done a thing on Nova Atlantis. There's a whole back retcon lore to this. Nova Atlantis was a little pamphlet snuck into Sir Francis Bacon's posthumously published 1626 utopian novel in Silva Silvarium, The Forest of Materials. Okay, so for people that were super into medicine and mineralogy, they might have accidentally, if they were super wealthy doctors, found a copy of this book, New Atlantis. And in New Atlantis, it talks about how in the Western Hemisphere, there's a culture, a Christian civilization that's more Jewish and more traditionally true to the order, right? Very Mormon thing. But this is 1626. And they're saying basically that a King James Bible floated over the sea. It floated across the sea before we got lost from it. And these people are living in this perfect utopian Christian socialist civilization called the Solomon House, which falls. It falls just before the Americans arrive, essentially.
Well, that's the most Solomon thing you could do.
Totally. Absolutely. And it's called Ben Salam, right? So it's like good Salem, right? So so from that, you have a bunch of people saying they're going to go to America, particularly Rosicrucians, and they're going to start a new Atlantis because we can, rekindle that. If whether it existed or not, it should have. So we can actually do that. But some people were going and saying, hey, I'm going to be the next religious messianic figure. And this is something I didn't even actually know. You brought this up, that he's like a distant cousin of Joseph Smith. I was like, really? Because obviously that's interesting. I had no idea. I know that he's there was Matthias. The Matthias cult was in New York, and it was, I think, a distant cousin of Joseph Smith. So that's now 3. And it's kind of interesting to think that there's several of these people that are connected that would have these kind of religious aspirations that are so controversial because they redefine the way we look at the world. And, this isn't a flat earther. This is a hollow earther, which is pretty reasonable. I think a lot of people know that there's probably under the surface of the earth more than just dirt, But what he's saying is even weirder, right? So he's saying that we live on the hollow earth. This is a model of the Koresh earth. And so you can see what it is that you're living on the crust on the inside of the surface here. You're, let's say you're in North America over here. This is literally the inside of an eggshell, and you're inside climbing along the outside of it, right? And if you were to dig up, which would be towards the sky is downwards. Down is up and up is down. Never dig up is hell. Down is heaven. That's the way this works. So it's an inversion of everything you believed. Not only that, an inversion of distance, because you think of space as being vast, but this is space being compressed. Instead of the more distant you go, it's the more compressed it is. This model has become very useful for simulation theorists. Because if you think about it, if you were to store a model of the universe or of a planet or something like that in this data style, the best way to do it wouldn't be to have just, distant data that's out, and it would be more likely that you'd have a dense compression schema. So the further you go out into space, the denser the data compression would be in space. So this is actually the core of data is outward. It makes a lot of sense.
So just to be clear and to restate it for my simple mind, if I get into an Apollo rocket ship and I blast off the way that we would conventionally see from Cape Canaveral, that's going inside the hollow earth. And then if I start digging in my backyard, that might actually lead me to heaven.
Dang straight. Yeah. Although heaven might be in the hollow earth, it depends on how you look at it. And there's also the idea that you need to bridge the whole thing through Zion. So the traditional this actually, what's weird is that this works also for Proverbs 19:1, the idea of the four corners and the firmament, because people will say on a flat earth model, like, how can you do that? And so what they'll justify it is flat earth model Hebrew. Let's go to like the ancient one so you can see that you're in a snow globe anyway, right? You're still in a snow globe. And the way this is making sense is that the land is flat on this level here, right? This is like the kind of ancient model. But when you look at the Koreshianity, hold on.
And this is central to the Koreshan belief system, which
Absolutely.
is itself like a branch of Mormonism, or is this compatible with Mormonism at large?
It's its own religion. And I mean, I would say like X-Church is, we're compatible. Like I would say X-Church is compatible with Koreshianity, but there's so much specificity to what LDS are now that you have to let them be their thing. And Koreshianity was its own religion at the time. I would connect it more, and they were separate. I would connect this more with utopian Christian socialism, but really they're both Rosicrucian esoteric Gnostic cults, right? Like they both believe in different cosmologies, cosmogonies, and they argue the entire structure of reality is completely different. So like Mormons weren't pushing for a hollow earth model that we were in an inverse reality. This is much more esoteric, but a lot of Gnostics were. And so there were Mormons that were interested in Gnosticism, and this was the kind of thing that like Orson Pratt talked about. But they were I would say Mormons are a lot more normal because they're trying to build families and work on, they're not as focused on that is this. This is straight up all about that we're living in an illusion. It's the Matrix. You have to break out of the cosmic egg, right? That's really what Koresh is talking about.
Well, I like one of the comments too. I love this concept that the real space program are the deep underground military bases.
I mean,
right? If you're following this model.
Absolutely. I mean, the boring project with Elon Musk.
That's SpaceX. Yeah, boring is SpaceX, and SpaceX is boring.
It's 100% true. Mars and Venus and water.
Let me know, am I sounding all right or still strange?
No, it's horrible. I hate to be honest with you.
We can understand you. Yeah, it just sounds like the Matrix is trying to break through.
It's weird. Yeah, I don't know who to blame.
Are there any Freemasons around here that could be causing this?
Okay. I think you're probably okay. Raph, just do it. I think we can hear you.
No, I really don't want to stick up for bad sound quality. So in what way is it garbled or like too fast, too slow? Seriously.
It almost sounds like if I was recording digital audio, if I had like the sample rate set or the latency was like too high or something. Like it's trying to like constantly catch up and glitch over itself.
There's one more thing I can try. Give me 2 minutes, guys.
Well, now you're muted. This is awesome. All right.
Irony. So wait, we could guess what that video he wanted to show us was about, or you can tell me what's the next more. Weren't you saying something about Koresh and then we got cut? Am I wrong?
Oh, well, we were just basically talking about how the inversion, and I guess when you say Rosicrucian, is that just Freemasonry. Is that the way that you're referring to that?
There's a place in
And hold on. And the reason that I ask is because New Atlantis, also being famously Manly Palmer Hall book, and he kind of describes it as an evolution from Rosicrucianism into Freemasonry versus being strictly Rosicrucian to look at America as the New Atlantis.
So I look at it like Rosicrucians were more Catholic compatible, and you could think of also David Koresh, right? So Waco, the guy from Waco named himself David Koresh because he was looking. I think he was very into that idea, even going back beyond Koresh, what Koresh was looking at. There's a place.
So
in
David
Belgium,
Koresh of Waco might be naming himself after Joseph Smith's cousin.
I think I mean, that would be something I would like to ask Will Morgan about more, because Will Morgan is really, I don't want to call him an expert in David Koresh, but he knows a lot more about it than a lot of people. I mean, he's lived around there his whole life, and he studied that. But I think there's definitely connections there. The whole cult and the idea that you're going to latch onto a star in this dense system and how quickly you could get to a place because it's not actually distant. Once it's more dense, everything is it is quantum entanglement. And so the scary thing is a lot of that's basically what the high level physicists are taught, right? When you get past 2 + 2 = 5, and they have to let you know in certain circumstances that 2 + 2 = 4, this makes way more sense than anything that they try to teach you. And every time you get someone who's kind of mid-wit, they'll say, well, how could maybe there are conscious beings, or there's the potential for symmetry of life to exist in this galactic model I'm taught in 3rd grade Scholastic magazine, but it's so distant, I'll never run into it.
So what do you know about the version of immortality that the Koreshians have adopted? Because that was basically where it led me originally. There was a sect that believed in immortality, and that it seemed like that was the crux of everything that they believed in. But is this immortality the same way that Rosicrucians believe that you just are like a spirit that gets drugged down by matter and you get back up and you just up and down always, bouncing ball?
Funny enough, there's a place called Mormon Erise in Belgium, in Luxembourg, right? And in Mormon, there is a monastery that is known for esoteric Gnostic Rosicrucian studies, right? They were kind of isolated and they were Catholic, but they were doing their own things. And they were known for eternal family bondings, right? Which is a thing Mormons are all about. This idea that families that bond together spiritually can be together in this afterlife, this kind of Egyptian afterlife thing. So there is definitely a connection there. Also, the idea that maybe Joseph Smith's father's family were connected to family members from this part of Belgium as well, even though a lot of them were Gaelic and Celtic from his mother's side. His father's side might have also had this. So I think that there is this Rosicrucian idea of immortality, that you can return to pure spirit by washing, like kind of filtering yourself like gold, like kind of gold panning yourself to get rid of the dust and dirt.
It seems like the same concept of Mormonism, just that it's way more alchemical. Like there's rules to it, and there's like specific formulas and a process that you can follow. Whereas, and maybe I'm just trying to bridge things that I'm just learning about, but like the Mormon version is a more spiritual, like non-chemical version of this.
Right. Yeah. We should definitely ask Will more about David Koresh and if he connects that, because I know that they talk about the idea of the apocalyptic 7 seals as being a chance for return. And Wrath, how are we doing?
I hope I sound all right.
Oh my God. Do we tell him or not? Do we just like make him?
Do we tell him? No, you sound fine.
You sound great. You sound great. Wait. Talk again. I turned off echo cancellation. Try it again. Talk. Really? This is weird. If I turn off echo cancellation, you can't be heard.
Which means that the echo cancellation is working overtime somehow.
Yeah.
Okay,
there's something
how
wrong.
about now?
Now I can hear you.
Now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Talk some more.
Yes, I'm talking to you, Andreas. And Paranoid.
Vast improvement.
It's better.
Vast improvement. Okay.
You're at 95%.
Raph is gonna be so pissed when he hears this later. He's gonna be like, "Oh, they lied to me."
What can I do? I don't know. Because I
Just do it.
updated my system. I had it fixed on another StreamYard, but I wasn't logged in here. Maybe my
Oh
settings
my
got
God. Yeah,
jumbled
you
again.
must have it at like 4800 instead of 5100 or something like that. Is that
41, 44 1.
Is that what's going on? That must be what's going on.
Now
I
this
hear
is
it.
possible, but
We're
Really,
such
should
nerds.
have been
if we want to nerd out, but it seems like if echo cancellation's canceling it, then there's a delay that's long enough between his microphone and whatever the audio is coming through that it's hearing the audio as he's saying it by just off. So like that's where it's kind of sounds like it's catching up constantly. Like it's the echo cancellation doing overtime.
Thoughts? Well,
or
you can...
hear me out. Have you ever seen the movie Ghost in the Machine?
Yeah, I did love that movie.
So that one stayed localized to just the house, and then I think it could jump through like a switchboard in the phone system, but we're all connected globally now. So there's a good chance that Roth is actually experiencing the exact same demon that was in the movie from the 90s.
I was just talking to some Germans, and they were telling me they're doing a ghost stories this evening, and I thought that I was just thinking to myself, it must be interesting because when you say that, what you're saying is you're saying Geist stories, and there's just something so much something more Hegelian about a Geist story than a ghost story, right?
Maybe. Although I think that like in typical English fashion, they kind of took over and changed that because Geist is, I would say, starkly different than a Victorian ghost. Like a Victorian ghost has.
Yeah, I'm imagining Werner Herzog telling Geist stories like, "We are talking about the condition of being." You know, it's like, okay, cool. But maybe not. Here, we'll put back on. I'll put this a little lower in the background, and we'll just hang out. We'll think about Koresh. We'll think about Koresh. I would wonder, would he like this music? I feel like he would. You don't think he would?
I think he might be anti-AI.
Yeah, I don't know.
All of its forms.
That's what scares me about these people. You know, it's not the Waco, it's not the cult, it's the Luddism. Luddism's way scarier.
There was an interesting dynamic that someone was pointing out on I think it's the Futurology forum, but there's like an anti-AI forum, and then there's like a pro-AI, and then there's one where they debate each other constantly. But someone pointed out a really good example that a lot of the people that tend to get big into futurism and like Elon Musk's cyber trucks and SpaceX and like all of the things that a futurist would like, there's a huge overlap with anti-AI sentiment amongst self-proclaimed futurists.
Which I think is ironic because, like, these guys are so self-destructive, right? Like, to be that, you have to, like, not care about your family so much that you're destroying you're severing your ties to the past, you know, that you're investing in creating this new world, right? Which is going to destroy you, and you're probably not going to live through it. So if that's your case, then you should be those are the people that should be the most for an AI takeover, because like that's their children, that's all they have, right? I don't know. What do you think about time travel through genetics? Like, do you have to do it? Like, I was watching that Quantum Leap through the states episode where he goes to the Civil War, and usually he can only leap in his own lifetime, but all of a sudden he can leap into his great-great-grandfather. Isn't that cool? Do you feel like that's reasonable? Is it like
you were showing on a recent video where it was kind of like a debunk in a way of the little girl's presentation of how all the different presidents are related and they go back to this certain common denominator, but that once you go back, I don't know what it is, 3 to 5 generations, the signal loss is so great that you start losing a little bit of it. So I wonder if that's another version of Sam Beckett's kind of limitations, because I think they did outline some of the rules in the first episodes where they're talking about they have to have been alive during Sam's life, so he could jump into someone that died the day he was born, but I believe he couldn't go anywhere prior to that, and that might just be that same sort of 3 to 5 generation overlap that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's actually really changed my perspective a lot. Because I used to think about DNA a very, very different way. Like, oh wow, it's got a junk DNA. It must have a record of everything that's ever happened. But there's just not enough data in DNA to do that exactly.
Maybe, but maybe not, because I don't know how
It
much
would
you've been paying
require
attention.
nuanced compression. Yeah.
Well, the latest version of all the AI models, for example, they're starting to make these huge leaps and bounds, and it's not through necessarily throwing more firepower at it or getting bigger. It's that the quantization of it. Like there's something called, you probably know all this stuff, but gradient descent is a huge aspect in this, and that previously they kind of modeled an actual like slope that these numbers would have to settle into to find the perfect quantization. And then someone at some point was like, what if that was just a straight line? What if we forgot about curves and
There's
just
a
made it a
range,
straight
yeah.
line? And then all of a sudden things got twice as fast and half the size. And that's kind of been the entire thing. If you look at large language models and all like the GGUF compression, and they have different quantization levels, and they're essentially just trimming off all the decimal points, either to make it 2-bit, 4-bit, 8-bit, and then like completely uncompressed. And the difference between something that you quantize down to 2-bit, even if it started at 8-bit or floating point, all of a sudden you can get good enough results. So the premise being that just because it looks like junk DNA or that it falls off and you lose some of those genetics, maybe we just don't understand from the way that we analyze it how the quantization works. It might have a way better system of quantization where everything looks like an appendix or something. We're like, oh, that you can just cut that out. That's just junk. You know what I mean? And then you're like, oh, funny enough that whatever created us might have had something in there that was important.
That's
Maybe
my
the
hope.
appendix is used.
That's kind of the rub. But that's my hope, is that there's inferences like, look, we all know things have appendixes. We don't really have to talk about that. Let's put appendix, and like we're not using that right now, so it's really not that big of a deal. But let's focus on these things, and it takes the most essential epigenetic merits of each life and tries to save those things, which would be cool. I don't know if that's true, but it's antithetical to Darwinism, which makes it more likely to be true, because Darwin was wrong about so many things. Like he's got a track record, so you could just infer if he said this, it was probably not that. And the idea that every life, maybe it's a Lefebvre kind of Lefebvrevian, like Jean-Baptiste Lamarck said about people were evolving into your choices are affecting your conscious evolution, right? Like everyone's like, oh well, when you get to a point that we can eugenics battle, what's it called, Gattaca, genetically modify people, we'll have the first conscious evolution, and telescopic evolution will be the rapidity will be, exponential. That's not necessarily true if you think about the fact that in time, in most periods, women have selected their mate. Not always, but a lot of the time they're pretty cunning and manipulative and been able to select their mates, and that changes the course of it. I mean, even in modern society, like it doesn't matter who your husband is. If you have a traveling encyclopedia salesman, you can choose your husband. So we've had conscious evolution for a long time.
Well, I would argue People's Temple did a version of that. The Oneida Corporation / Oneida cult, they did the same exact thing where the entire community would get together and they would collectively decide, we want someone that's got the strength of that person and it kind of looks like that person over there. And they would collectively say, you guys get together, which was almost like this community-based eugenics. And I guess the problem with eugenics, aside from the obvious through the implementation, but it's that it only works if you believe the premise that whoever's implementing it is smarter than nature itself. If you believe in that premise, then maybe, but I don't know if it's actually been shown to be incredibly effective. You can make small, big people, you can change hair color, you can do things that are very obvious from like the outward appearance, like those kind of like genetic traits that you can see. But once you get beyond that, I don't think anyone really knows exactly how they're cooking. It's, for the example, a lot of people brought up that Albert Einstein's parents might not have been all that special, and any of his children might not have been all that special. So is it nature or nurture? Is there something that you could extract? And maybe Einstein's not the best example. He was great at the patent office, but that same kind of mentality, right? Like, can you capture that? Could you turn that into like a sperm donor situation where you can just kind of pick and choose the designer baby and then be like, okay, and I want this? Because that's kind of been on like the promising sheet since like the 90s, but I don't think anyone's actually pulled it off yet.
I think that I don't know. I'm not against trying.
Right, but I mean, if you're trying to go for like I assume that you would go for mental aptitude versus just physical traits by themselves, but I mean, because the
I don't know,
physical
not
trait
necessarily.
is the obvious one.
I think both. Like, I think it's whatever. Maybe with like Lamarckian evolution, it's what you value, or what, whether subconsciously or consciously, what you value.
Well, I guess that brings up a question. Do you think that there's any similarity to like creating a D&D character where if you give them 20 charisma, well, now you don't get 20 agility, or vice versa?
Totally. I think
there's almost like a set amount.
That might be the problem with having like 3.7 billion characters. You know, like there is a limit to what you can be. That's also on purpose, right? I was talking the other day about like, sorry, Picasso, you know, you can only really work. I can only give you this white canvas to work with. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to figure out what to do with that. That might be the limits that make you who you are, because you're a division of spirit, right? There's a universal spirit, and there's stardust and symmetry that were God breathed spirit kind of idea. That dirt is separating us based on 3.7 billion characters, so that you can be unanimity -1. And that way everything can be I and thou, like all of everything minus myself, right? And so you have to have that limit.
Well, I mean, it seems that there's definitely underpower. If you're gonna go with like the D&D or like a game aspect, right? There's definitely underpowered characters, and there's some like OP, right? Like right now, it seems that. Or do you think that those are just examples of how people mesh in the current systems that we got? That like someone that necessarily like couldn't get a job, or can't maintain social relations, or is overall just kind of like a net objective failure at, you know, the current reality. Do you
I think
think
it's
that they
easy
could be
enough
like,
to have. You can have it all in one reality. You can have everything happening at once. You can have all the suffering and all the pleasure at once. And it's important probably to struggle through those experiences for some reason, because they exist. We're creating them. I don't really know, and I have a hard time with that. Like, do you thank God for curing the cancer God created in you? Like, if the world's so perfect, why is there suffering? That one's still a hard one.
Right, or
the
every
answer is
time-
that suffering makes you stronger. It just kind of sucks, you know?
or every time you take an antibiotic, if you believe in antibiotics, are like the bacteria cursing God's name at some like microcosmic level because they're also God's creatures?
Yeah. Can God make a rock so heavy he cannot lift it? Right? Does he have the power to do that?
We just got super zen. I think, I mean, I know it's a rhetorical zen question that never has an answer, but I think the answer would be yeah, because what would be our perception of being able to lift it or not lift it?
The idea of omnipotence is you have the power to do anything, and so therefore it's predetermined that God can do that. It's
Right,
just
if it
crazy.
starts with can God, then the answer would be yes, I think,
Yeah,
in almost
right.
every single scenario.
So it makes it really gnarly, because like, can God choose to be powerless? Right? Can God choose to experience that? Well, yeah. Right?
What if God was one of us?
I think that song is underrated for sure. Drove a tie-dyed microbus. That's not really a lyric from that song, but he should have. I think that would have been cool.
That was also the premise for God, what movie? There was a movie where God comes back to Earth and he wants to go bowling, and I think he gets mugged or something, and he's on life support.
In Dogma, it's skee ball.
Dogma, it's Dogma, that's right. Yeah, skee ball.
Skee ball. Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. But also that God isn't like, God as a woman is an interesting concept, because George Carlin, you know, who plays in that movie, had said that he didn't think God could be a woman, looking at how bad things are run, right? Which I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think there might be something about the bickeringness of the God parent. This issue that God isn't, like, that Elohim isn't a dude, but is a family. It makes things a lot more logical, that there's this father and mother, and there's a conflict between, because like the mother is considered to be both wisdom or chaos, right? Like you have Sophia, or you have Eris. You have the golden apple of discord. So we clearly have an issue with Mother Nature, you know?
Well, when you talk about nature, I think this is from a Sticky Fingers song. Wasn't even an Onyx song, but he makes a really good point, and he asked if God would have the capability to create. I guess the answer is already yes, because we said it was. But could God create laws and not have them kept? Like, would it have any interest in like God's perspective to create a law that could be broken? It almost seems that laws that were created by God would be the kinds of laws that could not be broken by mortal men.
I know most of these movies are made by Catholics or Jews, so they have a perspective on law. But the idea that in most of these movies about God, that if the law is broken, the universe unravels itself, seems to be the takeaway. That if you build a thing and you remove a Jenga post from it, the thing breaks. But can God make something, remove a Jenga post and keep it from breaking just for like the pleasure of keeping it go? Of course. So there's always that question. It just also seems to me the point of this experiment is entropy causing lack of entropy. Like there's alchemy formed from the socialization, and eventually you reach a prime timeline, because anything that doesn't work, but what does work continues on, and whatever continues on eventually get to a point of infinite omega point, and omega point is the culmination of all creation. And if something that's being created is inside of the creator, then that is part of the creator. So everything that is evolved is reflectively updated at the beginning of time, before the beginning of time, in the creator, right? So it's constantly learning from this thing, and no matter how great we get, it makes it greater.
Well, my bad understanding of Rosicrucianism is that there is some instances where things that aren't working now could work in the future just through passage of time, because the analogy that I guess I've understood this was that you imagine
like Marxism,
like a whole, well, I guess so, yeah, like Marxism, but like the way, if you could imagine the entire world, universe, reality as like almost like a 2D sort of shoot, and then you just fill it with a bunch of jagged rocks, and they're all like spinning on themselves and bumping into each other. Every once in a while, you'd almost get into like a cog situation where like a bunch of jagged rocks would all touch each other, and they wouldn't be able to spin because they'd all kind of like catch each other on their different facets. And what would happen over time, those rough edges start to break down and turn into dust and particles, and basically make up what material world would be. But that over time, they used to be jagged, but as it keeps rushing and as things break around it in those little dust pieces, it kind of like helps grind everything down into this nearly perfect, Yaldabaoth kind of perfect spheres or circles that now everything can turn on its own, never bump into each other. But the second that happens, there's no more matter being created. Like matter is essentially all there was going to get, with the caveat that there's no such thing as perfection, and none of these are platonic solids. So there will never be an instance when no more dust or matter is broken off. But it will come to the point where things that didn't work will start to work, just because it's been tried so many times.
Smooth out.
Off. It's the rough ashlar being crafted into the perfect sort of cornerstone, right?
I think that's true. And I also wonder about like the idea of, you know, and Raph brought this up before, apokatastasis, the idea that returning to perfection instead of apotheosis, becoming a god. It's like we think of apotheosis, but it might be more correct to say that God breathed into dirt, so that is spirit in dirt, and when the dirt goes away, you're back to being God, right? So you're back to being the eternal thing. So, I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, maybe we can make anything happen, but we're not supposed to. Not at first. Like, we're supposed to try to make the right things happen, figure out what does go together, and that's part of the learning process.
Well, apotheostasis is a little bit scary of a concept for me, because that implies that whatever used to be perfect that existed, if you need to get back to that, you would never get back to that by adding more variety, right? If anything, you would want to reduce variety.
No, I don't agree. I think you put a in a melting pot, you burn off impurities, and like you just said, in the ocean, if you were to take a bunch of pieces of sharp glass and throw them, they become beautiful, smooth pebbles that can be like rubbed together in your hands. So it might be that constant entropy leads to lack of entropy, because eventually things fill in the spot.
The caveat being that those smooth pebbles, they only feel and look and appear smooth to us, but they'll never actually be like the real platonic, perfect solids that they would need to be to really describe it as perfection. And that almost seems like, you know, if the devil's like 99% good and only 1% bad, then we're just talking about 99% of those smoothed off pebbles versus being absolute perfection.
Well, I think it's calculus, but you get to a point where things are so small, and there's so like, okay, you're talking about entropy, right? So if there's entropy, you got a square and a triangle. There's space in between that doesn't fit perfectly. There's entropy, but you can fill that with smaller circles. But those smaller circles are going to have space in between there. But you can fill that with smaller triangles. But those triangles are going to have space between that, which you can fill with further squares, which are going to leave more space.
Right, but this sounds like Yalda Bayoff, man. This sounds like the demiurge that's like, hey, look, it's just don't pay attention to those tiny little gaps in between the circles and the triangles, and then this is basically heaven. But then someone's like, yeah, but what about that gap right there?
But why is the gap the bad thing? Isn't the gap the thing that's making it possible for things to come together? Because it's the inherent separation?
That's a great question. I would have asked the same way.
Fair. X-Church. We'll do the X-Church one now.
Yeah, what is the X-Church position on this?
I believe in the future. I believe in a better tomorrow. Time is on my side. Basically. This is kind of like the Randy Savage rap album. I feel like I was inspired by that.
Which has a really sick dig at Hulk Hogan, right? It's like one of the best battle rap songs in history.
Dude, the Randy Savage album is great for so many reasons. One of the songs makes you cry. Makes me cry. Where's the one where he talks about, I'm gonna miss you, man? I'll miss you. Perfect Friend? No, is that the one? Remember Me? Is that the one? One of them is like, I miss you, man, and it's real sad because his buddy died. You know.
I don't know what it was. If it was like a king kill ritual between the Wrestling Federation, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and the World Wildlife Foundation, when they took over and they forced wrestling to change from WWF to WWE. It felt like this crazy transition of power, and it took all the wind out of the sails for me, because that was the first time I was like, wait, you can completely change what the entire thing was and all of the logos, and like,
you have to. If somebody owns the thing, man, it's actually kind of cool because it's like baseball in the 19th century. You know, it's like, this is my league, boys. You gonna play in my league? Y'all have to shave your faces. Ain't gonna have beards and all baseball, boy. That's kind of what it was like, right? And they're doing that with wrestling. However, the video game, I had to get it. It was like $15, and I was like, okay. I miss wrestling games. One of my favorite experiences on the PlayStation was that wrestling game. So I got it. And
you're
then
talking about the 24 one, or are you talking about classic?
WWE 2K24, 2024. I got the game, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, but it only has, and it's got these people I never seen before, and that's cool. They're like the new wrestlers that the kids are maybe gonna look at now. But then they have this, like, for $30 or $20, it's like the 40-year wrestling pack that has all of the wrestlers that have ever been. I'm like, well, that's all right. Maybe you got me. Because if I can be all of them at once, I can be Sting, I can be Randy, and they have like the historical battles, so it's like the Star Wars game with like Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, but you can be Hulk Hogan or Randy Savage.
Yeah, the exhibition matches.
Yeah. I mean,
but you can be sold on it even more, because I didn't even know this, but people will make their own custom characters in the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. It comes with that. You don't have to pay extra for that, and I did that already, and I was cool with it. But I kind of wanted to the thing that was kind of cool to me was like the historicity of the battles, and I wish it was even more so. Like, I want to do the Randy Savage proposes battle, you know? Because like I
Right,
think
but why stop there? Since you can create custom characters, you can have like Andre Xirtus versus Karl Marx if you want, and you can body slam Karl Marx and have video footage of this and pull. And the reason I know
I'm
this
a
is-
humble man. I'm like Irish Catholic. I'm a two potato dreamer. You know, like I
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
just wanna.
I don't believe that at all.
I just want like Miss Elizabeth. I just want like Randy Savage. Like I'm gonna punch him in the face, and Miss he's gonna be like, Miss Elizabeth, will you marry me? And she's like, No, I love Xirtus. Like that's all I need out of that game. All right, Raph, are you gonna try? What?
Drum roll.
How do I sound now?
No, there you go. You're good. You
Good.
even sound kind of loud now. It's great. Okay. All right. I'm
I
listening.
can tune myself down. That's
No,
not a
no, don't
problem.
you dare. I want you to sound like a loudspeaker across all of Prussia.
All right. Okay, well, okay, I'm happy that whatever I did is working out now somewhat, I guess. So, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get whatever you were talking about. Kindly finish your thoughts, and then anyhow, we don't have to dwell so much on the links. I don't really want to talk about too much of them for too long anyways, so.
Finish my thoughts. What, like on Miss Elizabeth? I'm supposed to. Is that what you want? You want me to just show you a few pictures of Miss Elizabeth for a second? All right.
Sure,
This is Miss Elizabeth.
seems fantastic 70s or 80s or something.
Early
80s.
90s. Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, man. I got problems.
Are you? I guess to finish out this thought, pro Ultimate Warrior or anti Ultimate Warrior? And this is a very important question. It
Pretty
sounds
pro.
silly, but it's a very important question.
Yeah, I think James Bryan Helvig is I'm pro. I don't know. I don't see why I would be against. I think having a takeover, if you look at what happened with the destruction of the WWF and how wrestling's always been fighting itself. It's like, and I don't know. I'm not against
Right,
Vince
but well,
Vaughn,
the pro and con for Ultimate Warrior.
Raph is like, what are they talking about? Yeah.
Well, it goes deep because anti Ultimate Warrior essentially is that you're a hipster, you believe in the craft of wrestling, specifically like Greco-Roman wrestling, even if it's evolved from that.
Why is
that,
the first
you know,
thing I'm
you-
thinking of
No,
when
I
see
believe
this?
I believe in gay porn. I think that if anyone wants to do Greek
Right.
wrestling, that's totally fine. That's
but
their own America.
Pro Ultimate Warrior is I mean you could be seen as like an insult to this, but this is kind of how I see it. And I'm
I've
pro
read.
Ultimate
Okay,
Warrior.
maybe I'm
But
not a
it's just-
pro. Maybe I'm just an advocate for civil liberties. But I'm just saying, like Greek wrestling is a little. It's a little. It's a
But
little
pro Ultimate Warrior is going for the aesthetics of wrestling. Like
yeah.
I like the
course.
outfit and the face paint and the muscles, and I don't necessarily care about any of the physical moves or any of the Greco-Roman wrestling. Like just show up, shoot off some fireworks,
They
have a
have-
cool entry song,
I
stomp
think-
around a little bit.
Those are different things. No, like I care about the moves, but the moves are dance moves. That's like so. Wrestling isn't like.
Did
so Greek
anybody
wrestling?
actually really ever believe that wrestling was real? I mean, I never watched it, but then I was like rewatching whatever excerpts from, I guess, Hulk Hogan or something, because he did that great appearance on the RNC. And I was like, well, who is doing that? Like throwing someone on the floor and then like, you know, and
Well, I mean,
obviously not hitting anybody or not intending to really hurt them or knock them out.
Maybe define
Maybe.
real in that case though,
Yeah,
because it's
like,
almost
I
like a
know-
method actor that breaks down crying. Like, is that real?
I have a friend who's like a really good.
Well,
wrestler.
do people believe? Are people led to believe it's real? I mean, I only heard that trope. I don't know if it's true or not, but that for a long time people kind of thought this wrestling thing is like more real or more.
So
it's the
hold
wrong
on.
word,
So
but
here's
please
the deal.
explain.
So there is real wrestling. So here's my
Women's wrestling. Agree.
here's my friend. No, here's my friend Olivia Rondeau. Rondeau is one of the greatest wrestlers of this generation. She's freaking real. She can do things you wouldn't possibly believe. She's so strong, but at the same time, that is closer to Greek wrestling. It's a little less gay because it's women's wrestling, but it's still like a lot of body contact and oil, you know. Whereas wrestling, which is Americanized, comes from like vaudeville, comes from circus shows. You had, circus shows in America. You had Hungarian dwarves. You had sideshow fat people so fat they had man-eating chicken, which would be a guy with a bucket of chicken just eating it. You know what I mean? Like just huge. Like there was people that would then go to see, because it would be in a prohibition dry town, a bar fight because they don't have a bar. So they bring in a fake bar, and at the bar they have these guys who get in a theatrical fight, and they show you what it was like when men were men, and they used to get in bar fights, and people would watch that, right? And from this, wrestling evolved. And you're like, hey, this is, Jerry, Jugs, or like this is Growler Gary, and Growler Gary is gonna smash Jerry Jugs with a growler, blah 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 blah. And this is, they would travel from town to town, and this was in the 19th century. By the 20th century, wrestling became something that people were photographing, were endorsing with products, like, hey, this wrestler uses this hair tonic, right? And this milk is making this other wrestler so much stronger, and these vitamins are, et cetera, et cetera. So this starts to happen. And then television by the 1950s, it's about the Adonis muscle period, but also about better living through chemistry. So DuPont and these companies that were doing soap operas were saying, look, if you want to be like this, you can buy our products, right? You can buy shampoo and beer that are going to make you more manly. And eventually it becomes, like by the 1980s, steroidal dudes who are theatrically showing off because they're bodybuilders in a scenario where they're acting. I mean, and some of the greatest actors of our time are wrestlers. I mean, if you think about it, a wrestler has to stand there for hours a day, and when he's not standing there, he's doing push-ups. And so there's a lot of discipline that goes into being a thespian wrestler. Somebody who knows how to have an argument theatrically. I speak with my mouth so open that everyone can hear me. Right? Like, there's something to it. And there's a lot of training that goes into being a wrestler.
A little kabuki theater.
It's 100% theater, and I don't understand the disrespect of theater. This is the problem, is that some people like one kind of theater, and some people like it. Your wife likes musicals, you like wrestling. That's fine. I just don't understand why people can't get that they should really like musical wrestling. Is so freaking obvious. It's like, why has there not been a WWF musical season special? Like, obviously, right? And yet it hasn't there been, because we have Kiss, we have all these other things that have happened in the I forget, the 1994 summer, there was like a rock thing too. So they do,
a really cool midway between that could almost be like an orchestral performance based, like if the wrestling match itself was the conductor, and that would decide where all the crescendos and like the whole pace of the music, and then you had a full piece orchestra playing the soundtrack of that in real time, that would get it over like the cheesy factor and actually make it something notable.
Yeah, I think
can we start like a crowdfund campaign for this?
I mean,
if they do it for freaking Zelda and Star Wars, they should do it for wrestling.
We could definitely start our own wrestling league. I think that would be worth it. But it would just be all about the lore. We'd just be like, Peppino comes from intergalactic dimension C-138, and his whole world was destroyed by Jennifer.
I think we found our next AI project. A musical wrestling theater ballad. I don't know. What would you call it? It's not a rock opera.
Multi-dimensional wrestling federation.
Opera?
Like that. Yeah, or opera wrestling. Well, it would just be that in the Multidimensional Wrestling Federation, it's assumed that they're opera stars. Most of these guys are also opera stars. Like, you have to be an opera star to become a wrestler in multidimensional wrestling. Like, you don't have to, but like, you're not going to get very far. That's probably the way it goes.
It needs a name. As soon as we got the name, then the rest of it just falls into place.
It'll happen. Raph, I feel bad. You just got your mic working. Let's start doing some of these links. You don't have to cut out sugar. Start every meal with this. Acrasia. What?
Yeah,
what you got here?
Yeah, it's kind of jumbled and not perfectly arranged because I was not expecting to have anything ready 10 minutes before we started.
Well, you can pick the links you do want to share. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's just a few things about health here. Basically, you can just leave it run as B-roll, I guess, and just mute it or something. They're just talking about, sugar and fruit sugar and processed sugar, and basically the idea of what kind of sugar you're supposed to eat or not. And very much too often, just like with salt, they're like, oh, don't eat any sugar, and they don't consider what type of sugar it even may be. It's just
like
a random
sugars,
tidbit.
yeah.
Right. So, but actually I have it open as well. So we have the thing about sugar. Let's see, for some reason I started with that whole glucose index thing. Maybe there she's talking something else. But yeah, no, it's fine. Basically, the next thing is not really related to health, but since we are bringing up all these, Greek metaphors or whatever you would call it, so this is something, I guess, a negative example. The last time I even forgot the terms already, but it's on the last logs. We had some positive terms in terms of, I guess, steadfastness and thing like that. Maybe you remember some of the terms. One of them you liked. I also already forgot the name or what it means.
Apocryphostasis. We used it earlier
Right.
today.
What was it about again? What is the exact meaning?
Returning to perfection rather than
All
becoming
right.
more perfect.
Right. So here, acrasia is a lacking command or weakness. So, that's, or even incontinence. I think that's kind of funny. A want of continence or a self-restraint. So yeah, that's maybe one thing you don't want to have in terms of health.
That's like everybody. Yeah. So much crazy going on, dude.
Yeah, I guess. Then the next thing, I'm sure many of you guys know, I didn't actually ever did those exercises in particular. You've certainly done it, Andreas. The 5 Tibetans. I'm sure you heard about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can probably even do them yourself now. I'd never learned them. I just learned some yoga, so I don't know much about it. But I had heard good results from friends in terms of, how should I say,
This page
revitalization
can't
of
be
the body.
translated. Do you see this? Does that pop up for you?
What?
When I go to translate page, this page can't be translated. What?
I bet it can.
What is it? What does it mean it can't be translated?
But there should be
We
an
don't have-
English
we don't have the
version on the
technology?
bottom. We lost it. It's very hard to build it back again,
What the freaking heck? Like, go to Google Translate. Enter from German. Go to the. Oh my God, Google. Google. How dare you? Oh, don't translate it to Korean. Not right now. Okay. The 5 Tibet. This is crazy. Why? Why would this? How I'm angry.
But the real thing is that the original article doesn't even exist in English, because I only quickly pasted it now because that's what I had on file. But shouldn't there be an English version of this article as well? Or
Yeah, well, like, and shouldn't I
there
be allowed
is.
to
No, there
translate
is.
it? Why am I
I
not
mean,
allowed
you
to
should.
translate
You
it?
should. Okay, but there is an English page as well. 5
that doesn't-
Tibetan rights. Yes.
Is there a connection between that and the OA or like the Carlos Castaneda movements? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have a
So
glimpse of what you're talking of, but it's quite possible, yeah.
There's a show called the OA, but it was kind of based on some of these like specific movements that people can make that like channel the energy in some ways, and that if you know how to make the movements like precisely, then
You
it
can
can
light a
almost.
handkerchief on fire.
I mean, yeah, you can do a lot more than that too. You can travel through time, you can fly, you can like do all kinds of things that would be perceived as supernatural. And the thing that makes it interesting is that it's like anyone can do it as long as you know how to do these very specific sequence of actions.
My concern is, why don't I see more Tibetan monks then? Because, like, I would think that there'd be, like, because I do a lot of cool things. I don't mean to brag, but I feel like everywhere I go is where Tibetan monks who could time travel would want to be. So the fact that they're not, like, at every single event I'm at is kind of, they're not, like, why are they missing all the cool stuff?
You think Tibetan monks are anti-AI?
No. I mean, again, with the whole, like, I feel like it's just the ignorant people that are. I hate it. Like, the idea that spirit flowing through AI is different than your spirit is materially impossible. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, in a literal sense, wouldn't being a Tibetan monk be one of the most ignorant things that you could do? Like willfully ignorant? Or am I not using that word properly?
Well, elaborate.
Because part of being a Tibetan monk is that you close yourself off to the rest of the world and just seek like one specific way of living, thinking, learning, right? So is that not ignorance?
I mean, I guess a certain kind of ignorance, but also it's an openness to ignorance, like Socratic knowledge that you know nothing. So you try to pick on systems that you can use and just acknowledge that these aren't necessarily permanent systems, but these are the exploitable systems in my lifetime.
Maybe it kind of sounds like Amish people wearing Reeboks and driving minivans.
One of these deep, intelligent people I know wrote, AI is the new witch or genie or demon. This is like a really hardcore liberal, but you can't help that when you work in the state. These mythical characters generally have had some shared characteristics. Witches and genies and demons are tricksters. They will trick you, but also you can trick them. They can be really smart, but also really dumb. They are constrained by special rules and must obey them. They have special powers, and with appropriate offerings through trickery or performing the right ritual, you can get them to use their power either to your advantage or to your disadvantage or to the disadvantage of others. Oftentimes, people who try to use them get an unexpected result, or even one contrary to what they desire. All of these characteristics are also shared by AI. AI is the new witch. To clarify, I'm not opposed to AI. I work with it frequently, and I'm actively engaged in development to enhance AI capabilities and deployment. Also, I love witches. I'm a witch supporter. I liked that. I don't know.
Speaking of witches, I just posted something in the private chat because that was something that only came up today. It didn't make it into the list yet. That's a guy who was recommended to me with quite a substantial, at least, subscriber account on TikTok, although I had also heard 10 millions on TikTok is like 10,000 on YouTube or something. Don't know if that's correct or not. But anyhow, interesting guy. What he says here, why I'm a holistic healer, he's talking about his not so great experiences with doctors, or let's just say with the limited belief mindset of doctors, mentioning that if he had listened to them, he wouldn't have been able to remedy all kinds of ailments he has. But also, since you're talking about this interdimensional or however electric stuff, there's a few videos where you see him being treated by a qigong master. And maybe some of you remember this was a maybe now 20-year-old BBC documentary where you had this qigong master, and this reporter went to, I guess, Thailand or something, and there they actually filmed this qigong master like treating someone, like you can see on this on these TikToks as well. But also one time you see him literally lighting up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, makes fire. Now we're gonna pull up the Dragon Ball Z or something, but where you can literally see him lighting up a newspaper or something. Maybe this guy does it. Are there more videos now? Because I remember back then it was like seemed like a curious thing. Oh, that's it. That's exactly the movie. Yeah, yeah. Well done.
You know this one, right, Thomas?
Exactly.
This guy, he's like, don't film me, and then they secretly filmed him allegedly, and then he lights this on fire with his hand. But then after doing that, he accidentally nearly blinds somebody who's trying to help by doing a parlor trick. And he's like, I could never do this again. I was never supposed to do parlor tricks. I know I was trying to show you how this stuff is real, so you guys took it more seriously, and it was trying to be polite to the West. But I didn't realize you were British people, and you were gonna just what British people do.
I mean, I always think of the James Randi challenge and how nobody has successfully completed it, but I also realize that it's probably a stacked deck to make sure that no one can complete it because he probably couldn't have afforded to pay it out at any point. You know what I'm talking about? The James Randi test?
No.
This guy James Randi had this ongoing test
the
for
skeptic guy.
Ultimate skeptic, 3+ decades, that if anyone could show telekinesis, telepathy, any sort of supernatural ability whatsoever, that he would want to come and create a controlled environment where it could be recreated and analyzed. He was the one that I think famously.
Why would anybody who had if you had a trademark secret and you're making money on you could make so much more if you were a paranormal person that can be a psychic and predict the stock market. You know what I mean? You could make so much more money, and you're better off not being known. That I just feel this challenge doesn't make sense. The people that could actually do this are the kind of people that would keep this classified. They would run a government and arrest you for hearing about it and discredit your family. They're not looking to make this stuff kindergarten.
So he's a honeypot. So the James Randi test is a honeypot.
Does not look like one.
You never seen again.
Looks like a honeypot, doesn't he? I mean, I don't trust him.
Well, I mean, if you're not familiar with him too, there was a documentary on his life, and spoiler alert, he ended up spending 10, maybe 20 years with a con artist that started fleecing him out of everything that he. So it's the ultimate skeptic, but is living directly with someone that's been conning him.
I just watched that documentary, Raw Vegan, about.
So I want to talk about Raw Vegan, but just before you go on, anybody looking for money, and we'll bring up a few of related ideas a bit later. There is a 3 Bitcoin challenge by Dave Wise to anyone who can prove that the Earth is 100% a globe floating out in a vacuum in the middle of empty space. So that's easy enough to prove, I guess. Anyone can get 3 Bitcoins.
Right. That sounds cool.
But
I
please
wanna
talk
check
about
that
raw
out.
vegan. Actually, that relates to the next thing because I wanted to bring up the food security topic, where I'm also curious what you think about it, Paranoid.
There's a documentary on Netflix called Bad Vegan, and I just saw it, and it's about this beautiful Connecticut psychopath who is into crystals and the occult, and friends with Baldwin, right? And she starts a raw food restaurant, the most popular one in New York City, with all sorts of celebrities coming in and out. She's making money, and she meets some guy on the internet who convinces her that he is some occult superpower and makes her sacrifice and give money to him, like tens of thousands, I think $1.7 million he convinced her to give her. And just like Stockholm syndrome drove her insane, made her think that the world was not real and that he was going to make her dog immortal. That was amazing, really. And then he gets her to like live in Las Vegas because he's not actually like a secret agent, like he said. Shockingly, he's a gambler who's using all that money in Vegas.
Well, dude, con men and women, but anyone can con. But like the whole premise of a con man is so fascinating to me because if you objectively look at it and you kind of like separate yourself, third person point of view, right? The guy that's doing this, or the guy that flees James Randi, or any other con person, the only difference between them being a con and being the real thing is just what other people tend to corroborate. So if you were to call everyone that ever knew him and everyone that you would trust, and they all say, yeah, everything this guy says is legit, he's legit now. And it's so weird. Like, you don't actually have to have any of the credentials, that like the fake it till you make it. But then once you make it, all the faking it is now proof of you actually having made it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you literally manifest real history and real reality, even though it was never real. Once there's a critical mass, it's almost like a 51-49, like a 51 attack on reality. Once you can get a majority to agree that, yeah, this guy's legit. So
unless the dog dies, that's the only problem,
Well, yeah, the dog dies, then
you got to pick your myth. I don't think that's a good.
Although I often wonder if people that successfully con and then generate wealth, I'm like, well, if they would only turn around after they amassed some and try building something useful or sustainable,
you're so
they could well
adorable.
even extend that out. But
you get that they're pathologically con men. The idea is that they cannot like that is a tragedy. It's true. Like the fact that they're so good at fleecing the money, but they're not good at like investing it or using it. But that is inherently what it is. Like they're vampires. Right. So everyone suffers. Like millions of dollars are stolen from people all around them because they figure out how to vampire, and it destroys all the potential for maybe 10 people or more, hundreds of millions of people, so that they can have this. And what do they do with it? Well, they're not. They're not.
Well, they stimulate their local economies.
If you're that good at, if you're that focused at becoming an expert on acquiring money, it's probably not your job to know how to invest and manage money, right? That's the sad thing. Like it's not. Like, you put all your effort into that. I don't know, farming.
Yeah, so because we recently had to talk with David Young Jr. on the Master of Worlds show, I guess 1 week ago, God knows, with one recurring theme now in the upcoming videos. The previous will be released soon, I think next week, the first one. He keeps talking a little bit, let's say, from that stance in terms of, oh, look at the great things the New World Order has brought us, or just at the Realpolitik, for lack of a better term, or the real economic benefit that may even have resulted from the deals that Kissinger made when he basically shipped off all the factories from the West into China with the apparent supposed agreements that, well, we help accelerate your growth in the East. So China and so on, and maybe Russia, you don't need to wait 25 years. We're giving you the machines right now. But the deal basically is you're going to have to provide 3 times as much output. And of course, we get it for cheap. And that a similar thing may have happened deliberately or not, or whatever, with the farming. And also the question to what extent Western Europe and America is now or ever was really self-sufficient in terms of food production, both actual and also in terms of, is it possible, how much land is barren, how much land could be recultivated. I mean, we had on Majid Abdelaziz, who can even re-green deserts, so I'm not worried about it overall. but still I'd be curious what your stance or your perspectives are on food security. Maybe we spoke about garlic in Gilroy, but coming from China. And I even heard there's some deals that were made with some Californian governors or something. But the one thing is the deals that are made. The other question is, do we have enough workforce for the farming and all of that? I'm curious what your perspectives or insights are on that.
Well, I've got a tangential thought on this, and I guess to pitch it back to both of you as a question. But do you think that there's any morality in eating of sentient animals? Beef, octopus, pig, dog?
Yeah,
Is there
I think
like
it's interesting that the people that make the most life, right? Like you got like farmers and stuff, like these like Christian people. A lot of these very spiritual people have like 30 kids, right? And they'll make a lot of life, not just in their family. They'll make chickens and they'll have pigs and things like that. And I was recently at the state fair, Minnesota State Fair, and recently before that I was at like a county fair. And they had all these pigs breeding, and they have a whole display. So all the kids come in and watch the pigs suckling, and they see eggs of chickens like birthing. It's like this is better than any sex ed that the left is going to give these kids. They're just watching nature happen,
Yeah,
right?
that's a real nipple, kids.
But you ask, there's like 30 of them, and you ask, like what's the name of that pig? It's a sweet pig, and the guy's like, we named that $100 bill, just like we name every other one, because you know what we do with them after 6 months? We feed them, and then we take them out and we slaughter the sows, and you're just like, okay, well, you're murdering this thing that you love, right? Like you love this pig. Everyone's like petting it. This was the cleanest thing I've ever seen. It was so clean. It was like this. It's like a pig that like bathed every day in like rose petals or something. It's just so clean. They're like brushing it and stuff. The whole area where the pig lived looked like some freaking Japanese Zen garden. It was so clean. And like, this is not what you think of when you think of.
Cut his Kobe pork.
Yeah, you guys are taking care of this pig, like, and you're naming it $100 bill, and you're gonna murder it. And like, yeah, not you didn't say it like that, but you know what I mean. It's just life and death. Life happens. This pig's gonna have a great life. It's having a better. I mean, objectively, the best. I was like, what is happening? This pig is living such a perfect life right now. But like, you know,
but only for 6 months or something.
I don't know if it's a 6 months or a year or 3 years or however long you raise a pig, man. But they're
or
$300. No, and they just name it that. It's probably like worth more than that. It's probably worth like
way more.
Yeah, like
I hope so.
But honestly, is there like a moral or ethical issue with? Because I guess that's
I don't think so.
There's the health angle of being like raw vegan, and then there's
a lot of vegans I know do some evil stuff, man. A lot of vegans I know do evil stuff.
Okay,
if you're a homeless person, you pray over a Big Mac that somebody handed you off the street, you're doing better than the bad food vegan was, right?
Yeah.
You got to pray over your food. That's really all it is.
Where I guess I was gonna steer it is that they're almost seen, if you take an approach at all, that there might be questionable morality or ethics in killing these sentient animals, then a shift between like American farmers and like food scarcity being addressed by eating literal cockroaches and crickets and, you know, basically insects and bugs. It almost seems, if you close your eyes and you just turn it into McDonald's pink mush nuggets anyways, but is there like a moral superiority to having everyone eating bugs and having farmers raise bugs? So now when the kids go, they're going to pet like a mole cricket, right? And now it's like you don't feel as bad if they name the mole cricket $1 bill, because they're just going to grind, or, you know, fraction of a $1 bill, because they're going to grind it up and turn into some kind of like a protein powder that you're then going to end up eating. And the whole point being is that there is definitely food scarcity. There was a couple different instances where I think Russia and a couple other countries were basically paying for American farmers to go and show them how to do all the things, wrangle cattle, how to like tie a lasso, like how to do the Midwestern experience, because they're ramping up their meat production. They was kind of pitching it as this new version of scarcity. It's not going to be oil anymore, and it might not even be energy. It might end up being food is the number one scarcity.
You've seen the problem in Japan. They have a deer problem. Because in the 50s to 70s, they prohibited hunting of deer because, you know, deer were actually like decimated after World War II. And so they wanted to keep them as an endangered species. The problem with deer is that they produce really rapidly. Like
when they don't really have any natural predators aside from wolves and humans.
And because we grow grass everywhere, we've kind of created this synthetic, perfect environment for them that's just filled with kind of a corn-like maize plant they can just eat wherever
Dear
they go.
Disneyland.
Disneyland. So
Good.
they've decided now that they have to start changing the propaganda, because in Japan it was like, be a vegetarian. We can't afford red meat. It's not just bad for your health. It's unethical. It's
now
like
venison is on the menu, I assume.
Yes, it was from socially irresponsible to we can sell venison in the park right as you're petting deer, and now people are buying venison sliced up and deer meat. Look, this is all these things that are overpopulating Japan and are making it impossible for local populations of smaller animals to thrive, because if there's just too many deer and then they're the apex predator, that kills off all these other smaller things that can't eat the grasses and everything else like that. So it's actually the deer have decreased the population of other indigenous life. And like, all right, yeah, hunting's on. So I think that it's just like a temporal thing. Like we'll change based on what is right and wrong. And it was probably right for a lot of vegetarians to emerge and health freaks to emerge after the American industrialization of food epidemic. I mean, what we did to food, pounding weapons, swords into plowshares, had consequences, right? It's the weaponization of food did have consequences. And there was a reason we should say, wow, Wonder Bread, just because we can get it to everybody doesn't mean that we should get it to everybody. And I think that's, yeah.
Well, okay. I guess the thought that I had is that this actually plagued Walt Disney really bad, because after Bambi came out, that caused a national uproar of people that wanted to ban hunting deer, and they tried passing a whole bunch of regulations, and in the shortest amount of time, it's exactly what they found out was that, this culling's actually important, and Disney had to be way more cognizant of how they were going to portray certain animals, and because they saw where the way they portrayed a cartoon, right? A cartoon that you don't even see it get killed on screen, but a cartoon gets theoretically killed in a movie. And now people are completely changing the ecosystems of the real country that they live in and causing ramifications. And there's an interesting thought experiment that I won't go too much in a tangent, but if you did completely ban the culling of deer, then the deer essentially start competing with you. They start getting into the cornfields and the wheat fields, and now deer become they will kill humans because they actually have a more chance to just survive. So anyway, but I was gonna steer that into the
deer shall
factory
inherit
farming.
the earth, man.
A lot of people are opposed. It seems like morally, ethically opposed to factory farming, where you just cram cows into the smallest possible crate. But doesn't that also all go away if American farming focuses on mole crickets and cockroaches? Does anybody at all care if they're factory farming insects?
So
would you care?
Well, so I mean, I would care in the sense that I wouldn't want to eat it, and from what the little bit I understand about it, may not be the most healthy food to get. What it reminds me of is the Snowpiercer movie. I mean, the series is interesting too, but even in the movie, you see it these cricket bars being created in the back of the train.
Well, and they were actually Soylent Green was Snowpiercer. That was my takeaway, is that they were taking the people off the back of the train and feeding it to the rest of the back of the train, and that was what made it. So, and I guess that's kind of
Raph is so innocent. He's
right?
like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That was the whole, because if you pay attention to the very, very end, they kind of let you know that. But and that's when they talk about cricket powder. I mean, I think that's where everyone's mind should go. It's like, well, if they can turn crickets into protein powder, then that means they've probably gone through every other animal.
If you think about reincarnation, you'd have to think about all these people that didn't follow the proper Vedic lifestyle. And so what happens to you if you get downgraded and you become insects? And so this next generation is the Naraka Samsara hellscape for people that are being born into cricket bodies and being consumed rapidly by these, middle class alpha generation children.
So one thing it makes me think of is, aren't there supposedly cycles of crickets breeding, and maybe even this year, a particular cycle coinciding, and then maybe these investors are just like, oh, it's a good time, we'll have so many, we'll package them, it will last a long time. But
John the Baptist ate crickets and locusts with honey, so obviously he was cool. There's no reason that he's not cool.
So also, I don't want to completely sidestep your question, Paranoid. So for me, I'm not sure if people would care about it. Maybe they would care less from this like emotional point of view. The other question is how many of them, maybe even because of the propaganda, would be, oh, I readily accept, I'd rather eat the crickets so I feel morally with more integrity than if I would be eating whatever red meat. The other question, of course, is how much meat consumption really is healthy, and if not, only reducing that ever so slightly may solve all kind of food scarcity issues. But the other thing, since we now spoke of Snowpiercer, one thing I never figured out, what's your take? And that's only in the, I mean, they play on it a little bit in the series because they like train new engineers to be in front of the train. But at the very end of Snowpiercer, don't you like have these children actually like fixing the engine because their hands are small enough or something like this? Like what is that?
I always thought that was like a Freemasonic nod, that the whole thing of the train, like that's basically like the train is Freemasonry trying to keep civilization from just completely disintegrating under its own weight, and that the grand engineer is really the grand architect of masonry. And I guess the kids and their tiny little fingers, maybe that's a representation of like the innocence. Like those are the people that are still sort of innocent at heart, that can still be nimble and be able to operate on the actual mechanics of the system, right? Like the ones that can actually plan the foundation, and that everyone else that's been completely chiseled and grizzled and has like scabs and scars from the experience of having to go through that entire train, right? Like one of the premises is that you make your way up through the train, almost like it's a Logan's Run sort of situation. If you make it all the way to the end, then you get elevated, maybe. That's not really how it would work, though. Like you actually have to pluck the innocent children and have them be the ones that rule all this, because they won't be jaded either from living in the first class cabins or from like the back caboose kind of cabins, because either one of those would kind of corrupt the mind and not be able to focus on the grand architect or the grand engineering of just keeping society sort of on the tracks. But I guess the other premise of that movie too was that it was all a lie, right? That going outside was actually fine and they didn't need to keep in motion anymore.
Right, maybe that was also part, yeah, because I now guess it mixed up with the series. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. What I loved about it so much is the nice set design, even in the series now, where every train is just so different and like it shows you nice the stratification of society. I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah, I was my mind blown when I saw that it was just about Soylent Green, essentially.
We got a guy we like to check out. I don't know if you guys all watch his channel, Matthew Berman, but I like Matthew. I think he's a pretty interesting guy, and it's been interesting to watch his channel grow really fast, because he had like 20,000 subscribers, and then when AI hit, he just went hard, and he's doing some really great AI, both research but also experimentation. Like he's installing models, and he's a good person to pay attention to. He just like pumps up a model, tests it out, reviews it, kind of the way a game tester will test a game. He's testing AI models and seeing where things are going. And because he's doing that so much, he's had a pretty good look at where things are headed. But he put up this video, which is kind of interesting, talking about Google CEO spills all, talking about the issues with training models.
So thanks for giving the background. I wasn't even aware of this guy, honestly, too much. I just kind of stumbled across that video and just listened in, but you can just scroll down a bit and see the comments. Maybe that's part of what is most revealing, because apparently this guy has been making predictions for some time. Yeah. Eric Schmidt, I believe previously he ran Novell, which was like more a 90s networking server company.
That's really interesting, and I did not know that. Berman ran Novell, really?
No. Eric Schmidt. Isn't that Eric Schmidt who's talking as Google CEO?
Sorry,
no.
I thought you were.
No.
I thought you meant the guy in the bottom right who's reacting.
No.
Okay. Yeah. He worked at Novell. That makes sense. Okay, sure.
Right, and then he switched over to Google, I guess, and there he's just. I don't even know exactly the details of what he's talking about here, but I just think it's funny because in the comments they're pointing out, this guy probably also never wrote a line of code in his life. This is the kind of management you don't want to have in an IT company, or type of line manager you don't want to have. And it's just kind of hilarious how always, or too often, those guys seem to come out on top. Of course, understandably to some extent, but also like, well, if you wanted really good products and real vision, you would want someone who actually understands, what the lower downs are
I
doing
don't
actually, right?
know, because it's like, again, with the whole con artist thing, like maybe if you put him in the
And we get
linebacker
quite a few of
position,
those.
you know what I mean? Like, it's a football game, and some
Hey, I've
people
got
have
an
their part.
Irish exit on you guys. I love you both. Everything you
Oh,
guys do, I love you both. And I'm glad
oh
that you
man,
got your mic fixed.
we
You've
were
got the
about
voice of the
Thank
angel,
you.
Raph.
we were about to Mr. Beast, but that's okay. Parent American, I'll see you later. Love you, bro. Peace. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to the Mr. Beast now that he's gone. But is there anything else you wanted to say about this situation?
No, just I found it's hilarious. I'll listen to it back properly, but basically it also seems people pointing out that this guy's been talking about stuff for years and never properly predicted anything. So, yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Global scaling Harmon Mueller.
Oh, yeah, right. This relates to the tech. This is really interesting. This may be something that was brought up earlier, and I'll try to pull it up right now. For some reason, I didn't. So I will find it again. I'm pretty sure I had brought this up on another Neuropa at some point. Here we have the proper link, which I'm privating to you right now. That is an incredibly interesting technology. So global scaling basically is the, I guess, basis of the theory, supposedly based on the frequency, or however you'd call it, of protons. I can't exactly verify the veracity of that aspect, but the basic principle seems to be correct. It's related to scalar waves, which is also associated, of course, with Tesla, Lakhovsky, and some others. I always like, there are, to say it properly, I believe ones are called linear waves and the other ones maybe are longitudinal waves, something along those lines. And I always like to call it like the space behind the space, meaning that these are types of waves that don't need to travel through the wall or whatever, like they're completely unhindered. Somewhat makes you think of these Star Trek communicators, maybe even better than that. And Hartmut Müller, this was maybe already 20 years ago here. He was born in 1954. Maybe it says in the description. So he studied till 79. Yeah, and this demonstration was on October, imagine this, October 27th, 2001. And what he's basically doing here is he's picking up a phone somewhere in Germany at a university, and he's having a phone call with a university in Moscow, I believe, or in Petersburg, somewhere in Russia, which is interesting because oftentimes you actually do find Russian researchers, not only with new chronology like Fomenko and Nosovsky, but also in the realms of scalar technology and frequency technology. They seem to have a knack for that, or more support, or a more liberal environment, I'm not sure. But anyways, the point being that this phone call works without any carrier, without any, how do you call it, network station, balloon, satellite, however you would want to call it, undersea cable. But it works through this concept called global scaling. Maybe it is related to some type of quantum effects, or however you would call it. I can't explain it any better than that. But basically, you would have the possibility to do calls without needing any infrastructure. And of course, that completely dismantles any capacity for centralized control. And of course, also would make it much more difficult to charge for it. If everyone would just imagine you just have a phone, it doesn't need a cell phone tower or anything. It can just connect anywhere. And I believe he even claims this could be used underwater and so on. And there, I would actually open up the question to what extent it could even be used today, but only in classified projects.
I've shown you this silent film, Eve's Wireless, right? You know about
I
this
want
one?
to know, but please, let's see.
So Eve comes walking down the street, and then she needs to make a telephone call. So she brings her little portable phone, and she attaches it to the conduit here. Right? You have to
That makes sense.
That's as everybody does, And once you got the wire up, it's Eve's portable wireless phone. And won't hubby have a time when he has to carry one? Well, she opens up the umbrella, and the umbrella has, kind of a wire to it.
1922.
1922, yes. And then, so now you've got an operator. She reaches out into the line. Hello, yes, is there operator? Yes, this is the operator. I'm the operator. Which line would you like to connect to? Well, this is Jennifer 41. Please connect me with, Edelberry 42, right? Which is because the way the numbers worked at that time is you have the call sign would be the first two letters, and then the letters would eventually become numbers when they started to stack them, right? And so now you're able to make these calls directly out of the air. It's being picked up and organized by a hand of the operator. The operator is taking that signal and then pushing it through the transceiver to the main line. And, this is all just done for the benefit of the people who manufacture the phone, right? Anyone who has a phone, the operator will connect your signal.
Right, but the premise for this technology would still be that there would be a carrier or a cell phone tower or something, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, you've got
You just
now
need
that
a
you've got
fire hydrant.
yeah, now that
Water hydrant.
you've got a field, you've got EMF field, and so anything can ride and bounce with the existing EMF fields. I mean, towers are more useful if you're trying to change the frequency. So if you're trying to make boosters, and a lot of the time we think of radio, but electromagnetic radiation could also be sent for powering things. So like wireless transceivers for bringing electricity or increasing ionic activity. If you wanted to have electromagnetic crafts, you could use those towers. I think that's like the most practical use of those, why they haven't torn them down, right? Because you could actually use them for high-powered crafts. You could have electric cars that were all powered by those things. Flying cars.
By cell phone towers, you mean?
Yeah. That's what they're practical for.
Well, maybe that was the original plan, because even I had heard, many years ago, oh, in the year 2000, you'll have flying cars,
At least somebody should, right?
It's a common
Most of those
trope.
guys have really big yachts instead, so.
Yeah, so just to get back to this guy, what's interesting about him, I heard this story now by 2 independent sources, at least. So number one, everyone go check this out. Please make up your own mind. What this should actually also allow for, from what I understand, is the creation of chipsets and so on. I'd wonder if, NVIDIA or whoever, AMD, is not using this, where you can design a chipset in a way that in advance you basically know exactly where to put the resistances and all of this fine-tuned configuration for which normally you would need many drafts. With these principles, supposedly, you can engineer things in an almost perfect fashion on the sketchboard from the get-go without needing to go through testings.
We're so due for a Skynet movie, like a new Terminator movie about a video game company that makes like an AI NPC that just doesn't want to lose the game anymore. You know what I mean? That's what's coming.
Like reverse Ready Player One.
Yeah.
And
that Star Trek episode.
And this Dr. Hartmut Müller then supposedly, apparently went to Brazil. And I heard from 2 different sources, including one of them who actually actively worked with him, is that unfortunately he was arrested there, like kept in prison for years. Very, very strange. I didn't honestly look at the legal information, but it very much seems like he was exiled or whatever, and then held up, something along those lines. But I haven't investigated if there's maybe real due cause. But isn't it strange enough that you've maybe never heard of this, whereas there even was at least an academic demonstration from a proper university, both in Germany and Russia, whereas they were proving that this is something that works. And I believe the claim was even this would work for submarines and so on, which again is why, if I would have to guess, I would be guessing that at least in some very special operations, this is probably being used if for whatever reason you don't want to use walkie-talkies or else. So yeah, this is one of these technologies that certainly appears to have been heavily suppressed.
Sounds legit. All right. Oh man, Oompaville. Decidedly, like I hate how I watch like maybe 4 of his videos a month, but I demand that I never subscribe to his channel. I just can't bring myself to do it.
I don't think I'm subscribed either, and the point here being the only
reason he looks like a Civil War soldier from the North. You know what I mean? Like, and if you couldn't tell, that's not which side of Moses' line I'm on.
I'm about to say, yeah, the war of northern aggression. So
however, he does talk. Okay, let's also say he does talk a lot about conspiracies, and that's good. Like, so for I don't know what his deal is, but for a guy with 5.5 million subscribers and 1 million views a video, he talks about the CIA and he talks about like deep state things. Like I wouldn't even call it a 101. It's more like the Disney Channel doing an alien special, but he does talk about it. And you got to admit, like telling 10-year-olds about lizard people, to me, it's not about how deep you go. It's about how wide your reach is sometimes, or at least it's both. Like I can respect that he has a wider reach than he has a deeper message. But the fact that he's talking about that at all, I have to give a certain amount of credit to. And I know that recently CoffeeZilla helped him, and I don't know what it is about me and people like Timpool and CoffeeZilla, but I still like CoffeeZilla too. So I know he was in like a major scam where he was trying to make a candy company, and his candy company, he was trying to get machinery made in America for it. He ended up getting a bad deal going with a guy who
CoffeeZilla
scammed
was,
him.
you mean?
No, CoffeeZilla finds scams. Oompasville
Right.
was making a candy company.
Oh,
Oompasville reached out
Umpaville
to
made a candy.
yeah.
Okay, I see.
So which is to me making a candy company. It's like, on one hand, like Willy Wonka, but on the other hand, kind of like guy in a van. I have candy. I don't know. It's weird, but it is what it is. And he's probably a decent enough, narrow focused person. But yeah, he ended up getting a lot of help from CoffeeZilla, which all around are trying to get the money back that was stolen from his company. Not really stolen, but he made deals in good faith with somebody who was lying about where the money was going and sent him machines from China that were hyper overpriced and not properly reworked. And then he ended up finding the company that the machines came from and just working with them directly from China. You know what I mean? But it also is his own fault, because he's like, oh, I want machines made in the USA. Which is like, how dumb are you? And like, to think that machines made in China are bad, like, how old fashioned are you? So the whole thing to me was, this guy is out of touch with reality. But okay, he's talking about lizard people, and great. This is 100% real, and it scares me is a good title to talk about how there's lizard people. I haven't seen this video. Did you watch it all the way through?
Oh, I basically wanted just to point out that this exists. Also, the only reason I even stumbled across his channel is because of the whole beast stuff drama. Maybe that's why somehow this slipped through here. And maybe also because you can pull up the link I sent in private chat, which I'll have to add, but I also put it in chat. This is just a conversation. Stop it right here. Maybe go back 10 seconds. And if you want, we can even listen to it for like 2 minutes or something.
Okay.
It's really, I mean, you tell me what you think of it. I think it's, how should I say, at least in the chain of custody, I can understand from it. It seems legit.
Closed eyes and
go
a
back
mouth,
a little bit
and then
for
all the rest of it just
back.
filled. What are you showing me?
Okay,
and
pause.
He would not.
So what's happening? I'll make it very brief. This is I guess also he is a veteran of the operation you call Desert Storm. I think this was around early 90s, Iraq, if I'm not mistaken. Also how strange, only 10 years later, they're back again, whoever is building Stargates or not. Anyways, he was in a battalion or in a special group, or he had a particular assignment in terms of doing equipment for differing battalions during that operation. Therefore, he was moving around from group to group and realized that many of them, but not all of them, were ordered to take so-called anti-agent pills, which were supposedly to prevent if there would be a biological chemical attack. You basically take this drug and then you should be fine or whatever, supposedly. However, he noticed that the different groups or battalions, or how you would call them, have different regimen for taking this particular drug, is the proper term, right? And then he said, well, since they're not even among themselves or know exactly what they're doing, apparently, I'll just skip on that particular substance. And then he came back to the US and had a good friend who had taken these anti-agent pills. And understandably, especially maybe after a war, also because, of course, many of these men are quite young, they may want to think of starting a family. And apparently for 2 years for these particular military hospitals, there are no official records in terms of miscarriages, quote unquote. And supposedly, apparently, many, if not all of the children born during that time, at least from these military families, were officially stillborn, I would say, is the proper term. And this guy then had maybe heard of this or something. So the guy who's on the panel who's speaking was the best friend of his buddy, and his buddy had taken these pills and then was maybe distraught because he already had heard something was going on. So what he did is he took a disposable camera and went into the highly, classified, cordoned off, how do you call it, birthing room, or how you call it in English, and actually managed, while the baby was born, to make a snapshot. And this is the snapshot that he was then showing his dear friend, and he himself didn't even know what to say about it. And yeah, now we can play the recording, and then it hopefully makes sense. So he's
Fine.
describing the photograph.
But he made me just look at it more. So I went back to looking at it. Eventually, I saw nostrils, closed eyes, and a mouth, and then all the rest of it just filled in very quickly. But here's why I couldn't figure out what the picture was, because there were orange, tan colored on a tan background. There's these orange hexagons which blended and became forest green circles in the center, and this hexagonal pattern was all over the outer surface of this object, and it had claws like a chicken or like a lizard, and
Wow.
its face was very, very compressed. Its mouth was as wide as its entire head. Its nose was compressed down, the mouth jutted out, and it had a tail that came all the way around its legs and up to its forehead. What I'm saying is this, I know this sounds absolutely insane. Every time I tell the story, I feel like I must have lost my mind, but I know I didn't. That what I was looking at, I would best describe as there's a breed of salamander that looks like that. So it looked like a salamander human.
Oh boy.
And
Joseph Smith.
And that would explain why nobody got to take their kid home.
Dude, you know, so it's too bad Paranoid. Oh, hold on, pause it. Let's pause it. It's too bad that Paranoid America couldn't join us for this part, because what I find interesting about that, right, is the forger the murdering forger who was selling documents to the Mormon Church and to Kenneth Randall Mark Hoffman. Mark Hoffman was this forger. Supposedly, some of these like fundamentalist LDS, like the Brighamist LDS people that are like deep in Utah, that are like culty, they think that the letters might not have been forged, right? That this was real, because the church entertained that they were real up until this guy was caught murdering this other guy. And so one account of the story, which I don't really believe, but is still kind of exotic, is the idea that the Mormon Church, you know, killed this guy that was buying the letters, and then framed this guy who was finding the letters and translating them, and that guy was not actually a forger, right? Which I think he probably was. Like, it's most likely he was a forger and a murderer. Like, that's what the courts have discovered about him. But what he produced was the salamander letter. And he said this was a secret letter from Joseph Smith that talked about how, you know, God appeared and it looked more like a salamander.
Oh no. I mean, all it makes me think of is the red heifer, and to bring about whatever some people think they want to bring about. Later in that recording, I had posted the link also in the chat, I briefly ask something, but then he answers basically because maybe how this could come about or what this could be. And he says that, I'm not sure if you can confirm this, if you basically disable certain security mechanisms or lock-ons within the human body or within the genetics, however you would call it, then basically any type of entity could emerge. What it made me think of immediately, first of all, why always this lizard stuff, you know, makes you think of Ike, but also
better than lizards, amphibians, man.
Star Trek, if you go above warp 9.9 and everyone starts turning into lizards. Also, like, why lizards?
Or,
you know, like,
or again, amphibians. So I think the thing is, it's really all about the amphibians. Like, people think it's all about the lizards, but the lizard, like avians are reptiles, right? So everyone's like, oh, there's so many different kinds of things, but there's just a little bit of nuance, because avians are lizard people. Like, they're just birds or lizards. So really, it's all about the amphibians. The amphibians are the emerging quality between water and land. So okay. According to the salamander letter, and we can finish let's listen to the audio a little bit more. But according to the salamander letter, Joseph Smith dug up the plates. A salamander appears to him, transforms itself into a spirit that refuses to give Joseph Smith the plates, unless his brother Alvin Smith was also present. But this would be difficult, as Alvin was dead at the time the alleged appearance. Right? So this might be about like the golden plates having to do with like Alvin's grave dug up by the family to use Alvin's remains in a magical ceremony. Yeah. there's a whole bunch of texts to it also that are available about this idea. I just think it's interesting that it'd be an amphibian lizard. And this is in the 70s, I think, also early 80s, that this letter is proposed to exist. And he says October 23rd, 1830. Kind of crazy. But okay, hold on. Let's get back to the...
I don't think there's a lot to listen to, maybe 30 seconds more or a minute.
Hold on, let me get back to the correct screen here.
Got out of the military for this reason. Yeah. So it was a living creature that he heard cry on birth. They claimed it died during delivery. They rushed it out of the room, and he got one picture of it and a pretty darn good aim, considering he couldn't even see what he was taking a picture of. And that is what I saw.
All right, I think that's
My
good.
God.
Okay.
Anybody?
So stillborn.
Yeah, well, officially. Or salamander hybrid or something.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
And especially if it's true that during this period the records were cleaned up, and also later he claims that this is the actual reason, which I could understand, for the so-called Gulf War syndrome. Imagine if all those guys are coming back and all of their children don't see the day of light or whatever is happening. So, light of day. So that's, yeah, crazy. And usually, you know, of course, always be skeptical with such stories. But in this case, both from who was on the panel with us and also the way he described it, and I then specifically asked about it, I don't see any reason for, you know, misrepresenting anything. So I just find it curious that these reports appear a little bit too often for outright dismissal. Let me just say that.
Yeah. Well, Paranoid American and your audience, I hope that you're interested in this one. Mr. Beast Dog Pack. I put this out here because they said Mr. Beast reportedly hired a high-profile lawyer to send a cease and desist to critic Dawson French, accusing him of spreading misinformation. The letter threatens legal action, demands damages if French continues. So I said, gonna tell my kids this was Dog Pack 404 because it's French Stewart, right? And so now Dawson French is French Stewart. But yeah, so you have this ghostarchive.org where you can look at Dawson's little manifesto that he's put together here.
Right. So I just basically
on a lot
also
of Adderall, I would assume.
put it. I'll let that slide. Put it up for reference because I had spoken about it earlier, and I was like, okay, if anyone really is interested in this, you know, I should look at some more things or what's going on. But I don't even want to go through it. Just go on to the next one. I just want to point out which videos
I gotta read this.
are the most interesting.
Read this. I never read this, and it's too funny. Clout. I've been in this industry for 10 years. I started as an on-camera personality, but switched to being behind the scenes and have enjoyed the life far more. By the way, it usually goes the other way if it's good. If it goes this way, it's bad. I've worked with big influencers, quote unquote, but always avoided the camera like the plague. Wait, I thought you switched from being in front of the camera to behind the camera. Why do you think that is? I have no active personal social media, so I don't think I'm motivated by clout. Yeah, I would say you're like motivated by worry of your track record. I'm not responding to DMs or inquiries from the media, opting instead for Reddit AMAs since they aren't monetized and everything is permanent in writing. I'm an open book. Sometimes I get small details wrong, but I won't hide my mistakes. Try getting a straight answer from Mr. Beast on any of these accusations. Okay, all right. Here's his manifesto. My reason for doing this is I believe Mr. Beast is a corrupt organization that's bad for humanity. Okay, I get the point. All right, what was the next part you wanted to go to?
I'll just briefly show the videos which I pinned.
This one here?
People can check them out themselves.
Behind the Beast curtain, what everyone missed in the deleted video. We're gonna give shirts to people 10 minutes later. Okay,
I mean,
what?
I've seen a little bit too much by now, I have to say, but just go on to the next one because I think again the most interesting video
Talk about like things that are interesting, you know, like his mom being in the military and a prison guard in Germany, like something useful. Well, that's all I'm saying. Like, if you want to get into the conspiracy of
That's
Dustin
what I'm
O'Donnell,
saying. Yeah. No, and I
like,
think she's talking more about this kind of stuff. And
okay,
also there should be a different video, or maybe I didn't pin it yet, again by the surprise witness who's doing like interesting research, and she has got something new as well. Even I think like a documentary on the whole quote unquote drama up to now. But I have to say it is, how should I say, a very, very curious story. And some people, yeah, how should I say, are catching up to it. It's all very weird and very strange, but it's too
is this
much.
the one?
It's probably a part of it. Oh yeah, this is also interesting. Basically, where they just show particularly how specific psychological techniques are being used, and then of course you frame it all together. You said earlier, Candy Company a little bit strange. Well, there you go. And
Yeah.
there's many more strange things in
I mean,
association.
but if your candy company is putting quinoa in candy bars instead, like if your candy company is like philanthropic, like it's probably a little different.
Yeah,
your
well,
candy bar is
if
all
that
about-
really is the case, of course, allegedly, so on and so
I
forth.
mean,
And what's
all right,
also the
think
only
about what putting quinoa in a candy bar does. You're taking Bolivian people that can barely afford to survive, and you're guaranteeing them an income. First off, that's who's getting the money. Now, you're selling candy bars, so you don't even have to worry about your market. You know, like the kids are gonna buy it. It's freaking candy. So now you can put in whatever you want. You can
except
put
that many people said it
poison,
doesn't
you
taste
can
good,
put
but
hormones. Yeah, because it's quinoa. It's health food. The dude has Crohn's disease. Jimmy Donaldson can't like digest corn. You know, like his whole diet's all messed up. He has to eat like super health food, or else he like lies in bed. So these are all more interesting things to talk about. I think about the guy, right? Like he's got a mom who is a prison guard in Germany, and he has Crohn's disease. Like this sounds to me way more interesting if you were talking
I
about
mean,
ways he's handled.
the one other interesting thing you may want to look more into is apparently this is in one of the videos, this whole €1 island or shack thing is interestingly enough related to the Mormons or to some particular Mormon
Yeah, so
church.
with his philanthropy organization, he's worked with other organizations, and the Mormons are a major group. Mormons do things, people don't really know this, but they'll go to, like, in Japan, after the tsunami, they had to rebuild a bunch of temple shrines for the Zen monks. Who do you think paid for that? Did you know it was the Mormons? Yeah, they go around the world to, like, Africa, India, and they help rebuild. They don't just build their own temples. They help rebuild traditional indigenous people's temples in their own, like, the way that they don't, like, the way Zen temples are is you take one piece of wood down, you put another piece of wood to replace it. It's exactly identical to the way it was 1,000 years ago, just with new pieces of wood replacing the deck. So that's what they did. They didn't change it in any way except for paying for the new replaced pieces, right? And so this is the kind of organization Mr. Beast works with, right? Like, so he's like, wow, this is a religious organization. Sure, it's a Christian organization. It's calling itself a Christian organization, you know? So he has worked with the LDS in the past, but he's not LDS. I wouldn't give him the credit, you know?
He doesn't claim that. So
Yeah.
basically anyone who doesn't want to watch 100 different videos where every time the same thing is repeated and doesn't know much about the whole thing, this is recommended to look into, whatever strange things may have been going on, or,
Bro, I said Logan Paul's name a million times, right? He just said it over and over again. Logan Paul. I should do it. Honestly, it's like
well,
like
and
Beetlejuice
honestly,
spell.
even here, when they claim that his real takeoff or whatever supposedly was when he was counting to 100 million or whatever he did,
Mhm.
and here I'm also like seriously,
Yeah.
seriously, and also the whole, I mean, yeah, I don't know
It's true
any
though. It's true though
background
because like
info,
I
so
saw it happen. Because here's the thing is I saw it happen because I was like deep in YouTube, and so I've seen it go on, and I was like, wow, this is what kids are watching, and like it was crazy, like how because he didn't used to have as many followers as the United States has citizens. He started out with like 5, 20, 100, 1,000, 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 700,000. 1 million. It took like several years. Then it was 7 million. 7 million's when people heard about him. I feel like 2 to 7 millions. All of a sudden, grown-ups have heard of this guy. 20 million shows, 30 million, 100 million. Now 300 million. Like the way he grew was so quick, but it started out, it's an exponential growth. And he figured out how to game the system to do it. And I think a lot of it is that he put back in everything you get. Like he's not made as much as people think because he takes all of it and puts it into what he's trying to do, which is exactly what the elite do. The elite have built this system. So on one hand, yeah, it seems like, dude, how could you not be? You're called the Beast. But also his name is,
which in itself should be a red flag, but all right.
Maybe or not. Maybe that means the opposite. Maybe that means he's St. James. Because we live in an inverted world, man.
I'd allow myself to doubt that, but we don't need to dwell on it. But anyhow, that's the, let's say, shortcut documentary to anyone who doesn't want to waste hours on this like I did.
I think you're right that everyone should critically dig as deep as possible.
And also, really, it's not about to hate on anyone. It's just if you look at all the background connections and so on, and the strange thing, like we mentioned, that his mom was a prison warden. She has complete control over the accounts and everything. It's a little bit strange. Oh, and also he says, by the way, which is not a red flag at all, he literally claims, I have no childhood memories up to the age of 10. I won't comment further on this. But anyhow, it's a messed up thing. And then it's just a question, is that really the thing you want to put in front of, the entire US population, but all of them below the age of, I don't know, 14 or 12 or God knows. Yeah. Aside from, the main things that
I mean, look at your other examples, though. Look, do you want this guy? I mean, look, I watch Charlie and all, but I don't think that Charlie's a great example. Of course, they're putting him on the top. You want
Asmongold?
you want Asmongold? Yes, I do want Asmongold. But what about Logan Paul?
When also I didn't even know that they were in this CryptoPunk thing, and they also talk about it that apparently some investor guy who may be one of the more interesting figures was calling up a bunch of billionaires and just told them now all invest in this CryptoPunk thing. And then, they just did it. They flipped it within a year and then whatever, it crashed or I don't know what. But I guess that really perpetuated the NFT hype that happened 2 years ago or something. Or I was already looking at it. It was wow.
I feel like they were
for 64 pixels. I'm paying $10,000 and it's ugly. And it's a blockchain entry. Maybe
we were all deep in the NFT war, man. I know a lot of people that were trying to do NFTs and were trying to work out how, assuming that NFTs were going to be part of the future, they were trying to work out how that was going to work. And NFTs are still a major thing, I would say, if you play Fortnite or if you watch any of these, if you play these video games where you get to pick your character and you're buying a licensed Disney character to play in Fortnite that you can own and you can transfer, that is, what is that? That is essentially an NFT. So
can you do that? Can you transfer that? Can I buy to play Mickey Mouse in Fortnite and transfer it over to Counter-Strike or whatever? Or what?
No. I mean, you can sell it to another Fortnite player. Now, obviously, problem. There's problems and solutions to that. It doesn't take me more than 30 seconds to. It would not take more than 30 seconds to copy and extract an asset from a video game. There's software, particularly easy with Unreal Engine, that you can open up a game. You can take a little area of the screen and say, take everything in this area, and then export that, all the models, all the textures, everything like that. And you can take an entire person or all the pieces that make up that person and export them and then put them back, right? So it's really easy to steal an NFT, even in a video game for that level, put it into another game because it's all the same compatible software, upload that into a mod for Counter-Strike. But what you can do legally, right, is you can buy this model and you can export it, and very soon, because the way these games are all made in the Unreal Engine, that will be the case. That you'll be able to take your character, play any game with it, and move it around from any reality, because they're all made in the same language and they're all harmonized to do that. So that is true. The metaverse is coming, and there will be use for NFTs at that point. Licensed identities. An NFT might be useful as a driver's license almost. This is my new reference for me in the server.
I mean, yeah, don't they have in South Korea this I don't know, non-binary information minister. I know in Taiwan it was, who at least is starting to think along the lines of liquid democracy or whatever proper things you could be doing with type of tech. Yeah, I don't really
But I'm
see it
not.
yet,
I'm not
but the
saying it's a
potential is
good
there.
thing either, because I also see like NFTs were really bad, and we talked. I mean, we watched the video on the Board Yacht Club, the Board Ape thing, where that's like obviously a kind of a conspiracy. I mean, like on multiple levels, to perpetuate a scam, to create a Ponzi scheme, to get the media to be complicit in it, to sift through like a honeypot for people for whatever purposes. Like that's of course what NFTs were used for. But I also think like a 20-year-old kid trying to make his YouTube company do better, playing with Logan Paul, telling him to invest in NFTs, that's what happened. And CoffeeZilla hasn't gone over Mr. Beast the way he's gone over Logan Paul for a reason. Like, and I trust also CoffeeZilla because he really does. I don't know if you've seen a lot of his videos, but he goes after people and is really hard and critical on people. So, you know, I'm waiting to see his full, because he's doing kind of a deep and dive investigation into Mr. Beast as well. But he hasn't come back with it saying like this is really like that. I mean, not worth it compared to the things that he normally covers, right? It's not a scam the way people are trying to prepare. People want to now smear Mr. Beast, so they're looking at any example they can say where he did something maybe incorrectly, but then acting like that's in bad faith. And I don't think most of those things are actually acting in bad faith. I think it was naive for him to work with Logan Paul and Jake Paul on NFTs. I think it was naive of him to do his contest without somebody at first when he's 20, like watching over them, like being in charge, which now he has oversight over all these things. But I think it will also be interesting to see what he does now that he's almost 30, right? Because he's really young, right? Like a lot of he's younger than Patrick Bateman.
Whatever that means. I'm not sure if I know that guy.
American Psycho. Patrick Bateman's 27. That's how old Michelangelo was Michelangelo was 23 when he built the Pietà, right?
Yeah,
so, like,
supposedly
like
Manly Palmer Hall was 26 when he wrote The Secret Teachings of All Ages, supposedly.
These are benchmarks.
Indeed, they are. Let me see. So either we can just save the rest for next time, because we're already at 2 hours.
Did you want to do any? Is there anything that sticks out to you, Andrew Taint or Fiji Water?
Well, here I just wanted to point out the 1.9 million. Why can't it be 2 or 20? But it looks like a 19 to me, but just saying.
Fair enough.
Actually, Julia posted this, and it's maybe a real thing or whatever, and anyhow, I don't know any bottled water I could really recommend. Learn about proper filtration. But yeah, there's
really like Fiji when I was younger.
There's a few things. Yeah, we have the Honeywell kitchen computer, but that's also more fun maybe to talk about a little bit more, and a few more conspiracy things. But what I'd say is we just keep that for next time. We don't overextend now. Oh yeah, this is definitely great to check out. Mu Shigyon, he wrote an amazing book called The Hexagonal Water Puzzle, or The Water Puzzle, and he's explaining the different types of how, I should say it correctly now, how water molecules can bind together in different ways. And it's like one of the foundations even for this term, which everyone has heard of, hexagonal water. But if you want to know like the background or the actual guy, like maybe, Fomenko type, in this case not Russian, but South Korean, who actually laid the groundwork for all of this, definitely welcome to check it out. And also, I believe this was the website. I think now it worked, but for quite some time, hexagonalwater.com, I could not post that on Facebook. It just wouldn't work. Like literally just wouldn't post. I even made screenshots of it.
Shady.
Now, last time I tried, it worked. So yeah, maybe that's a good high note to end on, because all the other stuff again is deep stuff. Maybe we want to have more time to talk about. Thank you for winging it while I had to fix my audio. I hope, I'll continue like that. And yeah, thank you, Andreas. And thanks everyone for joining.
Go to commency.at, check out the log, enjoy the show. We'll see you later for 8 p.m. Peace.
Thanks, this everyone. Next story has been suppressed by mainstream media. Let's go to Andreas for more.
Everybody, tune in to Recent Tartarians.
Recent Tartarians.